I remember feeling so connected, so open, so filled with love. And I came into a world that was teaching me about good and bad and right and wrong, competition, violence, all the isms. I remember that being so counter to my essential truth. And through a series of events, I began to shut down. So here's a picture of me coming into this world as a whole and perfect spiritual being. Look at this beautiful baby coming into this world filled with light. My guess is that you also came into this world filled with love and light. Another story I like to tell is my mother said by the time I was 4 years old, she realized I was probably going to be gay. If you look at this picture of me as a 3-year-old, I often say to her, "What took you so long?" Because here I am at 3 years old, filled with my effervescent beingness, so enthusiastic, so deeply okay with who and what I was. But what I didn't realize at that point was I was born into a world, a time and a place where not everyone was going to celebrate that effervescent self. There were going to be people that were not okay with me being that little boy filled with enthusiasm. I quickly realized that because I was a boy, I was supposed to act in a particular way. Don't throw like a girl, don't run like a girl, don't talk like a girl. So we often don't identify some of what happens in the world as a traumatic experience. But for me, anything other than being taught you are a whole and perfect spiritual being is actually a traumatic experience.
Hey everybody, always glad to have you. Welcome back to the Mark Lundholm Show. Today's episode is entitled The Whole Message. And I got to tell you, we have a spectacular guest. I like all our guests. I always get to say who comes on the show, but they're either friends of friends or people I respect or both. Today's episode is going to be about some faith-based direction or point of truth, gravitational pull, natural, universal care, all kinds of broad brush strokes about what I believe, what I was born to do, the passion I have that creates the path and the purpose I take, all kinds of that stuff that's been going on. We've probably been talking about this since we were cave people. Today we get to do it with a guy who really is passionate about a different way. TJ Woodward is our guest today. Now, to be able to believe something means I have faith or evidence or have practiced a routine where I know that's going to work or I believe that's going to work or I've heard that will work. A foundation in faith is necessary if I'm going to grow up, you know. Part of the confusion for a lot of us as kids is we were told to believe a certain thing and didn't believe it, we said it anyway, or we found out that what we were told to believe wasn't true, wasn't working. They call that dysfunctional in some families. My family dysfunctional? Yeah, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. In our house, ADD stood for all different dads, you know. Dysfunctional? Yeah, our dog needed Alapet. That's how bad the drinking got. What I will tell you is a lot of people had a great faith from the beginning, and it worked for them. Were you raised in the church? Church don't mean perfect. Church doesn't even mean excellent. Church means this is where I go to learn what I need, to grow to be the person I'm supposed to become. A building, a belief, a book. This is a big episode about a lot of huge concepts that maybe people will never agree on, but that's the horse race factor, you know? My grandfather was one of the smartest people I ever met. He was funny. Gosh, he was funny. He used to say, live life like it's your last day on earth. Someday you'll be right. He would point at you. His fingers looked like the roots of a tree. He would point at you like you were around the corner of a building. It was like looking at a cross-eyed person. Like he'd point at you and you'd go, me? Right? He was one of the funniest people on earth. Somebody said, he was married for 57 years. They said, how'd you stay married that long? He said, you don't die. Well, okay, there you go. I guess the loophole is until death do us part, duh. Authenticity and integrity are super important to me at this age of my life. When I was younger, dealing dope, running drugs, making sure that my rear end is covered in a criminal endeavor, I mean, all that is creative. My history isn't really a mystery to you or doesn't need to be. It did a lot of time, made a lot of mistakes, broke a lot of hearts, busted a lot of friendships, betrayed a lot of promises. All that was because I'm too insecure to live up to what I told you I was going to do. You're a better person than me, and let's just leave it at that. I can't tell you how many times I disappointed other people. I've never been disappointed by somebody that I really respected because the respect was based on the fact that they're going to keep their word. They're pretty funny. My grandfather, first hero I ever had, he used to say things. He said, you know you're getting old. You know you're getting old. You know you're getting old. What was I saying? Man, I would just howl. He was one of those guys that could put you in a room. He would hold court. He lived in a rest home. He died of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Yeah, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. He would say, sometimes I forget to shake. Ha! And you would think, can I laugh at that? Yeah, he just gave you permission. He was one of the funniest people on earth and really somebody I strived to be like. Now, in that effort, I put a lot of faith in him. He'd been around a long time. What do you believe in and why? You know, a lot of people are why people. The guest I'm talking to today, we're going to talk a lot about the whys and the whoms and the wheres and the whats and the word belief system, the casual connection or really tight tether to something that's working when it comes to, I'm going to put my faith in that because I'm a human being and I'm frail and I fail and I'm fragile and I fall. Well, as I'm doing those things, I can get up or I can sit there and wallow in what I do. What you do is where you're going to go, and where you aim yourself is where you're going to find yourself. If that's faith-based, you and I do a lot better in a relationship. If it's me-based, there's not enough for you. I think you're going to lose, and maybe I don't win either, but I'm sure going to get my part before you get your part. A self-centered act means I'm only thinking about me. Every time I've ever put my faith in a goddess, mine's a she, it's turned out well. Even if I didn't know it or plan it at the time, I get to put myself first to be part of a process that is healthy, safe, spiritual, guided by light, GPS toward service. This whole show is always about what you can do to serve your community. In any capacity. Service can be, I showed up today because I said I would. Service can be, I'm a student and I'm part of the audience there for the teacher to do their job. Service can be, I was a good mom today. Service can be, I did a pretty good job with this episode, and the guy I'm going to talk to next, he is one of those people that serves constantly. He's got a different angle than the mental health community suggests or has done for years and years. But that's what makes heroes happen. We're unique, or we're the focal point, or we're the front, or we're the pioneer. Try doing clinical comical group. Try taking comedy into a treatment center, jail, or prison, a hospital where everybody's fractured, broken up, where everybody's crispy like they were just in a fire. Take comedy into that group and see how they like you. There's no history for what I do when I go to work, but that just means two things. One is there's no template for me to follow, so I get to be a little bit of a rebel and an individual, and I kind of like that. The second part is there's nobody that can prove it doesn't work. Somebody in the mental health industry, I'm sure they've said this to this guy too that I'm going to talk to, is they've said, well, where's the evidence-based practice for what you do? My short answer is you're looking at it. That's the best I could tell you. I've got a history of working with people where ha-ha works, where faith works as long as it's not something I make you do. I think people choose heroic. People choose individual, unique. My playground these days is a mental health community. I get to work with inmates and soldiers and teachers and nurses and adolescents and children and families of all those people in a capacity that says, hey, listen, if you want to do better, you can do different. Shortcut here for you. Different precedes better. You want to learn how to handle stress better? You got to do something different. You want to learn how to handle anger better so it doesn't become rage? Let's start with something different, behavior-wise, right? It's behavior-based, and the outcome is, you know what, it turned out better because I did something different. That's the shortcut. Different precedes better. Our next guest, the guy I'm really happy to talk to today, he's different. He's very different. Mental health community, that's my playground. I don't know if he would use that word, but we'll find out in a second. We're going to talk to next. I'm really happy about this. TJ Woodward is our guest when we come back. One of the pleasures I have about being the host is that I got some say in who I want to include as a guest. Today is not that episode. I was told it dramatically, emphatically, by the producers that be a company I work with, wholehearted.org, fantastic organization, that you're going to have this guy on. Turns out I like the guy. So wholehearted.org, TJ Woodward, Mark Lundholm, we're all part of a team that provides resources and actually some online courses that are pretty cool, CE ready, mental health, friendly, addiction specialist, a whole bunch of words where we're all going to do something productively for people who have stopped being productive pretty much for whatever their excuse is. I've been one of those people. Our guest has been one of those people. He doesn't mind me saying that. But when you hear the term, and you're going to, conscious recovery, this is who they're talking about. TJ Woodward, ladies and gentlemen, how are you, man?
Well, thank you, Mark. I love that intro. And, I like you too. So that's really cool. It's fun to be on a show with someone where we like each other.
Well, and immediately I got the feeling that there's passion behind what you do. And we have a couple of people, 3 or 4 or 5 of us now in this wholehearted.org conglomerate of healthier, maybe, at some level than we were, or people want to be healthier. They come talk to us in some form, social media, a downloading product, live performance, a programming that you can plug into a treatment center organization, whatever, where they follow a path that you've set out, where they can just dominoes all knocked down toward, hey, I'm better at me than I've been in a long time. That's not accidental, right? So, and we've been doing this for a while now, but first time ever meeting in person today.
Which is kind of amazing because we know so many of the same people. Obviously, I've known about you for years, and it's kind of amazing that our paths haven't crossed until now.
Yeah, and you said that earlier, and then you started naming off some of the people, and I named off some of the people, and we know a lot of the same individuals. Well.
Yeah.
And here's the part that I'm always amazed by is that the mental health field, the edutainment kind of thing, because there's some entertainment in what you do, and it's fun to watch. And I heard you working today in the studio with another guest, your angle and path on stuff. And I heard you, and I thought, there's entertainment in what we do because it's attractive. And I'm not banging our chests or patting ourselves on the back at all, but there's a way to educate without it being drab and dull and common. What you do in the mental health field, is it fair to say that you work in the mental health field?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, and people in that industry are also very unwell at times. The facilitators, the therapists, the social workers, the MSWs, the LMFTs, people with a bunch of letters after the name, still have SANITY in there somewhere, right? You ever been one of those guys?
Well, for sure. And that's actually when I do my conscious recovery trainings with clinicians, they want to learn the curriculum. And day one of my training, when I go into a treatment program, I let them know right away, day one is the inner curriculum. We're not going to talk about the doing or the groups or the curriculum at all. This is about an inner journey. So yeah, I've been that person that hadn't done a lot of my own healing, and I was trying to save other people so I could feel whole. So I've definitely been that guy before.
And so the word whole, I'm of the opinion, and this is a very late stage kind of breakthrough for me personally. I mean, I'm 61 years old, and I got sober when I was 29. And what I found out really important is there's two things I know for sure, honest to God. There's nothing missing in here.
Yeah.
I was born whole. And the second thing is the best I can do with the brain I got and the clinical disease I possess, I'm a disease concept guy, is that the best I can do on any given day, the best is a manageable level of cuckoo up here. That's for me.
Yeah.
And that's a safe place for me to live, where the insanity it takes to be a comedian, to have a lens that's cracked and cloudy and cynical and antagonistic and those things that make for good comedy, conflict. And here's what I get to say. I get to speak 90 languages, right? Stubborn, malicious. I'm fluent in forgiveness now. I'm fluent in female, right? I got estrogen in me. I mean, seriously. Yeah. I know you're not supposed to, but joke in the show. Estrogen, way high level here. I got princess in me, right? Last Monday, mani-pedi. Tuesday, facial. Wednesday, pap smear. It's a pretty good week for me, right? So how sick or how bad did it get for you that I'm not doing my own work and yet I'm helping X amount of people every week?
Yeah, and I love that you talked about wholeness, because you said something that is foundational now to conscious recovery and my journey, and that is you came into the world as a whole and complete person, right? You didn't use those exact words, but that's the foundation of conscious recovery. Underneath all our behavior is a whole and perfect person. So my story is I came into the world and I remember being whole and perfect. I remember losing that sense of connection with myself in the world, and I shut down and I used drugs and alcohol, and then I got sober. So that was a very fast way to say, when I got sober, I still felt so broken. I still felt so damaged. And so I started going right into service, and I think you know what I mean. Let me help others. Let me help others.
Yeah, I want to serve. How about you? I'll wait. I want to serve. They're important. How about you? No, not yet. I'm not as important as the work I'm doing. I'm not as important as... There's a hole that digs for us, I think.
Yeah,
I know it happened to me. So that what you said, because there's a joker in here, when you said, I came into this world whole, I knew it, I felt myself going away, I used drugs and alcohol, I got sober, and then I started. Why can't you be the AA speaker on Saturday night, that 3-minute version? That's what we want. I don't want 90-minute old cliche white guy from Ohio. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm a white guy from Indiana, so I'm close.
Very close.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and how long did it take you? Because sober doesn't mean sane and clean doesn't mean cured. We know that. I'm not a big believer that, hey, I'm broken down and I'm not treating myself well and that's how it's going to stay. Obviously. So when did the hope kind of break the clouds where you could say, I'm not feeling as disconnected? Because it wasn't booze, it wasn't sugar, it's not food, it's not sex. Relationship junkie?
Yeah, I've done all of that.
Codependent?
Yeah, for sure.
Workaholic?
Absolutely.
Do I keep going?
Sure, you can keep going.
Okay,
I'm sure
screen time?
Sure.
Attention?
Absolutely.
Porn?
Not so much.
Okay.
There's one. Yeah, not so much. We found one.
Okay. That's it for us. No. But all those things that would supply whatever we assumed was missing.
Exactly.
Or busted up.
Right.
What part of recovery, sober, right?
Yeah.
Sober, was it 12-step stuff?
I got sober in 12-step, 1986.
And they don't tell us, hey, you were whole when you got here.
Right.
That's not what they do. And I'm a 12-step guy. I'm not here to pimp for any program, and I don't recruit. Right. It ain't timeshare, you know? But how long into the process to give somebody a look?
I actually about 2 years sober, I reached a place where I felt really, really desperate and alone and disconnected. I think what happened for me, and I think we hear this a lot, I came into sobriety and it was just great to not have a hangover. It was great to have authentic connection. Yeah. It was great to feel like I had some kind of purpose. But what happened for me is there was a shelf life to that, right? There was a certain amount of time, about a year, that we might call a pink cloud. And then shit started getting real. I mean, that's really what it is. I started getting down to everything that I had been medicating. And I met a woman named Mary Helen that changed my life and introduced me to a very different way of looking at recovery.
And would you say to me, the TJ Woodward that she introduced you to, is he sitting at this table right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that has always been there.
Right.
And I thought that I needed to get somewhere to get that, or that there was a finish line or a destination.
Yeah, I graduate toward.
Yeah, I'm moving toward. And I think there's a lot to be said for that philosophy, right? And you named it. I think 12-Step has saved millions of lives, including my own. And there is a little bit of a culture there that focuses on what's broken about us. And she came in and said, she was this beautiful Southern woman, and she'd say, "Darling, you're so precious." And I literally would recoil because I felt damaged. I felt broken. I had so much shame. So it's been a process of
one of us is wrong there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I get it. You got childhood stuff?
Don't we all?
Okay. Yeah. And at what level? Geez, it was what everybody did on the street. It was significant. It was something I have to go get help for later. I mean, the amount of abuse that we suffer and don't even consider it abuse.
Yeah.
You know, somebody will say, my parents were divorced, but I didn't go through any trauma as a child.
Right. So I've identified actually trauma as one of the root causes of addiction. And of course I'm grateful that is coming to the forefront. Yep. But I think we have a tendency, we use big T, little t as a framework. It actually isn't quite as much about what happened as how I perceived it. So I had something that would seem insignificant where I couldn't tie my shoes in kindergarten and decided I was stupid. Right. Now that seems really insignificant, but that was life-changing for me. I also had sexual trauma. I had addiction I actually said I don't have addiction in my story with my parents, but my dad was never home and he was busy with women that weren't my mother. My mother vacillated between depression and rage. So I had a lot of that. Yeah. And so I had the full spectrum of trauma, but mostly it was I felt like I wasn't good enough. I decided I was stupid and not good enough at such a young age that got really concretized into my subconscious.
So let me ask you, I mean, because I have that kind of idea early on as a kid. I honestly don't remember coming into this world whole.
Yeah.
And maybe I haven't done enough work to go way back to the womb where it's safe and warm and rightly so protective, right? And then, boom, here we are. But I remember that not worth it. Or if I was a better kid, my dad wouldn't act like that. If I was a better kid, mom wouldn't hide like she does. But those examples of, hey, how we're not good enough, aren't they reinforced every time that behavior becomes what the example is?
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue, right? We decide at a very, very tender age when we don't even have the cognitive ability. Yeah. I mean, I didn't understand my mom had mental health issues, right? I didn't get that, right? So when she was angry, something's wrong with me. Now that's just my brain wasn't developed enough, right? But the issue is I decided that at such a deep level that I was walking around with that. And then if I'm walking around believing I'm broken, I'm going to keep re-experiencing it over and over and over and again in the world and then saying, see, it is true. I'm not smart enough. I can't do school. All of that was part of my story.
And a lot of us have a parallel process. To be fair, without any labels or, I never finished any kind of schooling you can name. I mean, I don't got no letters after my name. I don't have a license to do anything clinically, mental health. I mean, I'm way above my status attention-wise when it comes to doing a clinical group or a CE-friendly thing for a bunch of people who are a lot smarter than me. I'm not trying to be overly humble. I'm blessed to be able to take what I have and offer it, right? And I'm funny. That helps a lot. Funny goes a long way when it comes to healing.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of the first muscles God gave us.
Yeah.
I know that for sure.
And it's your gift that you've brought to the world.
It is. And if you have a gift, you have to give.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. You're doing that in a way now that seems more authentic to you than in the beginning when that's our label, that's our title. You know, what I do for people defines me.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't do this professionally until I was 20 years sober. So it was really those first few years of recovery when I was like sponsoring people. And I was trying to save the world. And I think you know what I mean. And
super service.
And in all fairness, it's because it felt too painful to look at my own trauma. I had been running from it through drugs and alcohol and sex and shopping and everything that you mentioned. So it wasn't like instantly I can start to address this. It was that I took away the drugs and alcohol, which you and I know are the solution, not the problem. And then I'm left with what's underneath it. And so it felt really good to help others. So I got addicted to that for the first, 18 months or so. And
in the service structure of the 12-step environment, and without breaking anybody's anonymity out there, I don't have any problem saying that a lot of people have helped me in a lot of different ways. The 12-steppers are some of those people. I got a ton of numbers on my phone, as I'm sure you do too. Everything works if you want it to.
Yeah.
You know, if I wanted to get clean and sober in a cardboard box, I could do it. I mean, addicts, alcoholics. Do you have any issue with the words?
I don't choose to use the word today.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What would you say so that we can have a conversation where I'm not saying one thing and you're saying another?
Well, I would say a person that has had addiction issues or a person that is in recovery.
Okay, so the person that I am that has had the addiction distraction processes chemically, right? That I'll reach for chemical, not truthful. Chemical, not spiritual. Chemical, helpful. Later.
Yeah.
Later. Chemical now, right? Yeah. That can be ego. That can be anger. I'd rather throw a fist than a party some days because I'm an angry guy, right? That kid stuff that says I'm angry about having to raise 4 kids that weren't mine. And my mom's hiding in the medicine cabinet because my dad doesn't come home at night. All that stuff, that flame, the fury, right? Sugar worked. Attention worked. TV worked. Athletics worked. Early on, I was in a pre-seminary program in 8th and 9th grade. I wanted to help people, right? In spite of what happened as a kid with some of those men, I thought I can be the one that does heal, the one that's, and then I found women. In 8th grade, I had a sexual interaction, nothing major, but for an 8th grader, it was a pretty good deal. I didn't want to be a priest after that day anymore. That had replaced that service, that need, right? And then I came back to always, I want to serve. I want to serve. Not the codependent Mark, or not the codependent TJ Woodward, but the one who's actually serving, right? Can we get some of that first? Wouldn't you recommend that to people? Yeah, and it's interesting you're saying that because I think that in my own journey and in many people I see, we do often start externally. I do really feel good about serving. I do really feel great about being of service in this way. And as a matter of fact, it sounds like you were really trying to heal, right? Some of your own trauma by this call to going into the priesthood, for example. And so if we take the good, bad, right, wrong out of it and then become curious, and I always want to be curious about what's underneath it, right? So if anger is a strategy, if addiction, alcohol, sex, shopping, if those are strategies, what's that trying to manage, right? And if we can get curious about that, and I think the inner healing is vital at some point because then I go from serving so I can get something to actually really wanting to make a difference in the lives of the people I work with. And I don't run out of gas on Friday night. Yeah. You know what I mean? I can't give you what I don't have enough of, right? I'll give you mine instead, that old thing about, on a plane, you put your mask on first. Unless you're codependent or needy or in the mental health business not doing your work, then you go, here, take mine. I've done this before. I can make it. You get 2, I get none. Can I have that back? Can I have that? Does somebody have a mask for me? I've lived like that for a lot of years, trying to fill that kind of something's missing in here. Yeah. And calling it purpose or calling it work or calling it service, where none of those were authentic. And then the hole's bigger. Yeah. And I'm creating that. Right. God made no junk. The universe didn't make a mistake. Fair to say? Yeah, because if I feel like I'm an incomplete
person,
Yeah.
if I feel damaged or broken, and my strategy is anything outside of me, anything you just mentioned, including finding work in a field that really celebrates this, like helping others, if I haven't recognized my inherent wholeness, then that is only going to be a temporary experience.
Right.
That's why we call it the honeymoon period early in a relationship. It's that same euphoric experience. But what happens is we get burnt out. And you already named that, right?
Oof.
We get so burnt out not because the work is so draining, as people say, but because it didn't actually fix what feels broken.
And the part about filling up, right? Whole. Being whole, going to work whole, I don't need for it to fill me up. I'm not an empty tank showing up so that people who are mentally distressed, addicted, afflicted, convicted, distracted, obsessed with whatever behavior patterns they're having that aren't working anymore. Because for a while, all those distractions, they work. Getting angry instead of, I'm a big fear first guy. I have a process for my own personal healing where when I'm really angry, if I ask myself, if I take a second and ask myself, where's the fear here?
Yeah.
That's always where it's growing.
Yeah.
It ain't rage. Rage is shame aimed at you. Or depression is shame swallowed by me.
Yeah.
But it's fear. I ain't going to get enough. What I've got's going to be taken. If it's good, I can't get enough, or it's not mine. And if it's bad, give me 4. And I'm afraid this is all I'm ever going to have, kind of thing. That's childhood stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been through that many, many levels of healing and talked to EMDR, and we've done the stuff. With conscious recovery, what layer was I missing? What can conscious recovery do for a guy like me or a person out there that's saying, well, I've done all the therapy, I've done all the work, I'm in the right place, because we're not done. Yeah?
Right.
Conscious recovery provides Mark with what?
Well, it's a foundational knowing that you're whole and perfect. And it's a leap for a lot of people because even well-meaning clinicians are trained to diagnose and treat. And so a big part of what I do in my clinical trainings, for example, is how do I hold space to look for someone's inherent wholeness? So I can go a little deeper with that and say that quantum mechanics is now showing us that the observer has a profound effect. So if I'm sitting with you and I'm saying, Mark, tell me about how you're broken, and then I'm co-signing on it energetically. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's terrible. I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but what conscious recovery is offering is a deeper possibility that there's still that place within you that's whole. And because we've separated from it through traumatic experiences, through disconnecting from that, we have this experience that is painful. And so conscious recovery is about how do I unlearn all of that so that I can return to a place of wholeness.
I have a personal opinion because of this stuff. Like I've got personal experiences that enter into a process group that I'll do. I'm working with recently 45 patients a week ago in an undisclosed location in Northern California.
Yeah.
And I'm telling them there's nothing missing in you and that we are born perfectly broken. Now that would probably go at odds with the conscious recovery, right? So if conscious recovery is added to that, now I've got salt and pepper, right? Because this is what I was when I was watching your work. I saw that there's some things where you and we don't necessarily agree in concept, right? But in the whole package, everything's addressed.
Yeah.
If they talk to both of us, if they talk to two of us. Not that there's something missing in either one, but what if there's a scoop this big and that's all the dirt we get? And we make ourselves this big, and maybe dirt isn't the word we want to use there as broken or perfect. The gathering we want, right? So when I say to somebody, hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with you. There's no hole. There's nothing missing. I'm a better gardener, I think, right? Than what you were saying, oh, yeah, that's so bad, the broken. They're only going to take us to grow a certain kind of plant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what you say about we save space for that person to enter into, oh, I'm a whole person, right? A clinician that doesn't do that right now can see you, watch you, download whatever you got, and they get to know how to take somebody from here to hero or zero to hero.
Yeah, because here's the
because most of the industry teaches exactly.
Oh,
what you
absolutely,
said.
absolutely. And what the litmus test is profoundly simple for me. How is it working? At the end of the day, if you're a clinician and you're in private practice and you've seen 8 clients, are you drained? Are you exhausted? Did what you did with clients, did it seem effective? And all I invite is not that I have the answer, but I have another possibility. I just did an interview with a really brilliant, one of my favorite people working in the field, Dr. Jason Schiffman. I had him on my show. And he said, it's really simple. If you imagine that you have a car and you take it into the mechanic to have something fixed, but the only tool they have is the wrench, it doesn't fix the whole car.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the wrench. So there's
or
nothing,
the mechanic.
Or the mechanic. Or, yeah, so it's not that there's anything fundamentally wrong with diagnosing, treating. All I'm saying is, in the midst of that, maybe just for 15 minutes of your session, would you be willing to also look for what's inherently perfect about them and what's whole about them, not their personality. Of course, there's issues there, but their spiritual essence. And if we can hold that and be a witness to that, something really profound happens that's way beyond me. It's something where we're tapping into something much deeper than the experience of being human.
And so, because I have where does God, spirituality, great deity, great creator, Mother Earth, universal truth, where does that enter into it for you?
So for me, a lot of times when we talk about spirituality, we tend to talk about belief. And I actually don't think, for me, spirituality is not about belief. It's about an experience of my essential wholeness, right? So if you look at a very small child, pre-programmed human, that's usually 2 or 3. We're starting to program them by that point.
Yeah.
They're really present. Everything that we're looking for in a spiritual practice is innate with them. They feel their feelings. They pass through them. Yeah. They let us know what's happening. They look you in the eye. They tell the truth.
Soak it up like a sponge.
Soak it up, right? So that means, if that's true for the young people we see, might that be true for me? Might spirituality actually be innate within me? And here we are searching. And there's nothing inherently wrong with, all what you said, but there's
taught
also
to search.
We're taught to search.
Told to search. Forced.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we're forced to search. Why? Because I'm not whole and complete, so I need the answer. And the answer must be out there.
And the teachers aren't whole and complete.
Right. Well,
the ones that
on spiritually whole and complete,
right.
But on a personality level, we're always growing and evolving.
So the clinician that's like the parent and the patient that's like the child, everything's just recreated, right. Recycled. And I'm a big believer that trauma, and as hokey as Gary Busey as this sounds, he's a big acronym guy. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Trauma, to relive agonizing, unwanted moment again.
Exactly.
It's the again part for me. Yeah, and I found this out in therapy. It's the again. The trauma is an event.
Right.
It's an incident, isolated or repeated, but it's the again that is the absolute agony for me.
Yeah.
Unwanted agony. It's nobody's fault. Predators do what predators do. The heat is hot. Wind is wet. I mean, wind blows. Water's wet. Sun's 10,000 degrees. You know what predators do? They hunt. You know what I mean? So I can't change any of those things. I can change the again.
Yeah, and really the conscious recovery approach to that is to recognize that what happens, because usually the trauma that's most significant is the really early childhood trauma. Yeah. As a matter of fact, studies of PTSD are curious, why can someone survive 9/11 and not have PTSD where the next person does? Almost always it's early childhood trauma that's getting reactivated. So in conscious recovery, like you're saying, we recognize that it's trapped in our bodies. So we need to get down to that, not re-experience the trauma over and over again, but it's usually buried very deeply in our unconscious. So we create a space to start bringing that up to conscious awareness, because most of us aren't even aware that we're re-experiencing the trauma. It's not that we even recognize we're doing it. I'm walking around with the frequency of I'm broken. And so I'm finding people to confirm that. And then I'm projecting the blame onto them. And there's the cycle.
Or it's just the lens I have, so that's all I'm going to be able to see.
Correct.
Part of the group, and if this works for people, cool. But what kind of car do you drive? You know, what kind of car do you drive? Not to gauge
GTI.
anything. Okay, cool. I'm a Jeep guy. So whatever kind of car you drive, when it was new to you and you got in the car, what kind of car did you start seeing a lot of all of a sudden, all
Correct.
the time? There weren't more that day because you bought yours. It's just that I'm a Jeep guy, a GTI guy, that he's going to see GTI things.
Yep.
If I'm a broken person, if I'm maladjusted, if I'm insignificant and there's a hole in me, guess what I'm going to see evidence of all
Right.
damn day?
Right.
That any kind of core, that's what you're going to see. The car is the car. But the vehicle I'm in, hopeful, helpful, spiritual, whole. I like myself a little bit more than I did 6 years ago, or as a 4-year-old. That's what I'm going to see. So, but it's in there. It's that Buddhist thing, right? God's right here.
Yeah. The essential wholeness.
Born that way.
Yeah.
All right. And if somebody doesn't agree with that, can't they still use you, conscious recovery, the technique, the process, to help people who maybe speak more your language than their language?
Yeah, it's interesting because
I'm a waiter.
In a lot of ways,
What do you want?
In a lot of ways, I have kind of more of a Buddhist approach. It's just I'm drawn to that. But I've worked with people that are fundamentalist Christians that love conscious recovery. I've worked with people that have said 12-step is the one and only way. Oh,
Yeah.
but this is just another layer of that. So it's not see, here's the thing. If it's not a belief system, then it's not that it's good, bad, right, wrong. This is a practice.
Or provable or not provable,
Right.
or evidentiary, or somebody's got to lose the argument here.
Right.
Aren't you tired of that in mental health?
Yeah, because again, going back to a wrench doesn't fix everything, but it does some great work, right? So conscious
Sure.
recovery is here's another possibility that you can try on with your clients or in your own life and see if it helps you.
And because you have some 12-step experience, I always kind of tell the guys that I still sponsor guys. And I'll meet a guy who's just anti-God. He's anti-12-step. He's basically anti-help is what he is. And I'll say, okay, let's go right to 6 and 7. Right there, which is sacrilegious if you're a 12-stepper. You ever notice how funny they are? The 12-stepper?
Oh, I've noticed, yeah.
You know what I mean? You ever hear Joe Cliche? That just, hey, get a book, read your sponsor, don't drink in between, go to meetings when you can, everything happens for a reason. It's a guy, when one door closes, another door. You're right where you're supposed to be. I sit there and think, honestly, God, I hope he relapses tonight. I'm that cynical about that stuff. I don't want somebody preaching at me.
Well,
right?
you know what? I'll share with you. When I got sober, I felt so broken that I found something that really helped me, and I became religious about it. I became rigid about it. I thought it's the one and only way. I was the guy
like cocaine.
Every answer was in this one book on this one page, and it has to be that one and only way. So I have compassion for that, and I'm also really incredibly grateful that quit working for me. It was painful, but it was the greatest experience of my life because, again, it's not about a religious ideology. We're moving beyond that now.
Well, and human beings in a room, they're trying to do the same thing, which is heal. Right. There's nothing wrong ever. There's no sinister or sad about that, really. But it doesn't work for everybody because they don't want it to.
Yeah, or sometimes some of the ideology is rigid and they recoil from it. And that's why we're in a really profound time right now where there's all of these different possibilities for how people can be in recovery, because I don't think there's one answer. Certainly, oh my God, if anyone says to me, I hope that conscious recovery is the one and only answer, I will cringe, whether I'm alive or in my grave.
Yeah.
Because it's not, right? It's all of these different ways we can heal now are being offered to us.
Well, part of the conscious recovery part that I was attracted to is that it's a part of, or it's in addition to.
Correct.
Or it's that wide scope of, hey, I can drive a lot of cars and see a lot of evidence and feel a lot of things, and none of them are breaking me down. I don't have to be broken down. It's not synonon, est. You're not old enough to remember that stuff. Right?
I am definitely old enough to remember est.
Are you serious? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just, the bald head and the gowns and you're scrubbing grout with a toothbrush and we're just going to beat you down to build you back up. Well, in conscious recovery, it sounds like we were all gifted and pleasant and perfect and moving forward when we got here. Something stopped that.
Correct.
All right. So for some of it was trauma. Some of it's just we're distractible. We put all our faith in booze or getting good grades or pleasing dad. Or you were talking about the 12-step guys. I know people who shoot 12-step into their veins like heroin. Like. Right. It's the only thing. It's religious. It's rigid. Yeah. The word you use, rigid. I'll take a guy who is anti-12-step and let's go right to 6 and 7. They use the word defects and shortcomings. How about if we take those right out of there and put undiscovered assets, unpolished gifts, right? Because we've got some good stuff. And the joke is, what's wrong with you? You tell me. Well, I procrastinate. Okay, that's an overdose of patience. Yeah. You're using it the wrong. You're using that wrench to fix a laptop.
Yeah.
I don't know that a crescent wrench is a good tool for a laptop. Would you recommend that?
Yeah, and you're speaking to something that I love because we're really in alignment here. The late great Wayne Dyer said character defects are only assets with the volume turned up too high.
There you go.
And that's absolutely it, because it's really about balancing those traits. So I'm really interested in changing a lot of the language we commonly use. Yep. So I call them superpowers.
Okay,
it's fantastic. A superpower, but what happens when I've got that cranked way up, right? So I'm a really independent person, and there are a lot of benefits to being really independent. There's a shadow when I'm so independent that I don't need anybody, or I'm not talking with others. I'm not connecting with the loved ones in my life. So it's really about balancing that, not getting rid of.
Well, the balance is in the fairness of, hey, I got to love me enough to treat me like I love me, because I'll treat friends of mine well because I love them. I'll treat strangers well because I respect them. They haven't given me any reason not to yet. I'm the guy that doesn't get the compassion, the time, the patience, because, well, I'll get over it. I'll get mine later. Yeah. Later in dysfunction means it's never going to happen. But that unpolished asset or that superpower, right? Sometimes could it be that defect, Wayne Dyer said, was with the volume turned up too high. What if it's not turned up enough?
That too.
Because I'm a believer that, and I'm not trying to correct a guy like Dyer's a god, right? In a lot of circles.
Yeah.
Ooh-ah, right? I'm not trying to rename that kind of stuff. But it's my impression that some of the gifts I've turned way down or underdeveloped.
For sure.
Like that independence, right?
Yeah.
And underdeveloped independence mean I'm a piece of a whole flock of people. I'm stuck in the middle. I'm only going to go where you tell me to go.
Yeah, and the conversation always goes back to me to like, what are those core beliefs and ideas I'm holding about myself and the world? And it's beyond just a belief, right? Because if it was just a belief, then all the cognitive work that we did and can do would just heal it.
Yeah, it'd be wiped away.
It would be wiped away, right? I just learned to change my thinking and change my life. But we need to get down and really recognize that because I'm holding that, like, let's use I'm not worthy, because that was mine.
Right.
My strategy for it was to excel, to be perfect, to be the high achiever, to be the workaholic. And it worked great for a short amount of time. But what happened was, why am I not feeling better?
Yeah.
I just achieved this. I just got that. I just did this. And the deeper work is really getting down to like not re-experiencing the trauma, but recognizing that trauma is still locked in my body. And how do I start to actually heal that? And it's not a cognitive process only.
Well, and maybe it's somebody like you. It certainly seems to be that you're the person that can recognize in somebody. Because if I go to a doctor, I'm going there because I'm not sure what's wrong.
Right.
So that's why they come see you. That's why they look you up, right? So you're the house of mental health. You know that guy. You ever see the show House?
Yeah.
Just a brilliant. He knows how to assess whatever situation it is. Conscious recovery goes way down to the core.
Right.
I get that. The part of it that I'm also attracted to is just the fact that it's another language I can learn how to speak. I talk about, I speak 90, 95, 110 languages, whatever it takes. I speak stubborn. I speak, semi-intelligent. I speak normie, normal people who they got to keep that thing they're born with.
Well, let me know who they are when you meet them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've met several in my life. They don't have the trauma. They don't have that. There's something missing here. They're the ones who, honest to God, people like me who are distracted easily by chemical, right? It's part of my nature until it's not, right? It is what it is till it isn't.
Right.
Marijuana is a phase in college.
Yeah.
For normal people. It's a phase in college. For me, college was the phase.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I love what you said, and I'm not going to be able to say it exactly, but it is until it isn't, right? And so here's something I really want to lean into. When we continue to repetitively view ourselves in a particular way, are we continuing to keep ourselves locked in a box? And that's the conscious recovery approach, is saying, how is this narrative that I'm fundamentally different in some way or broken? Nothing wrong with that narrative, but what is the effect of that? So as we open up, because what happened for me is I carried around that story until I was able to put it down. Now, we could say, wow, that's a mystery how long it took. But part of it was I believed it was who I was. I am broken. I am damaged.
The belief system you talked about.
Right.
And the box is very limiting.
Yeah.
Well, there's a part of you, and I heard you do this on some presentation I was watching, is what if there's no destination?
Right.
What if the journey, I had somebody say to me, a kid one time that I was working with, an adolescent in a prison up in Oregon, and he said, hey, old man, I got the rest of my life to get straight. Meaning clean it up or whatever was, put upon his little box that he lived in. I got the rest of my, turned out it was 3 days. 3 days later, they killed him. The other guys in the shower, the other inmates who were all teenagers, they killed this guy. So the rest of his life was 3 days. Now, if I take that to heart, the rest of my life is I'll get to bed safe and fed. I'm pretty sure tonight I could do that. But if I'm a conscious recovery advocate, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm whole. And when I take a gift like I'm independent, as TJ Woodward, and I overdose on it, now I'm isolated, right? If I'm underdeveloped in the whatever that gift is, I'm not serving myself enough. Otherwise, I'm giving myself a too big a portion. Where does ego come into that?
Well, love the question.
Okay.
Because when we say in conscious recovery that we're whole and perfect, I'm not saying that everything I've ever done has been perfect, or that, because the key...
I'm shocked.
The key is...
What the fudge brownie did you just tell me?
Because I separated from the knowing that I'm whole and perfect, I caused all kinds of harm in my life and others.
Right.
The ego piece, because ego is really just the personality self, the collection of beliefs, ideas, and stories I'm holding about myself and the world. When I believe I am that, then of course I'm damaged. And then I have to figure out how to fix what's damaged. So there's a paradox here,
okay,
right? Because yes, I'm whole and perfect. And yes, there's really only this moment, because the rest of our life actually is just this conversation.
Sure.
On some level.
Yeah.
And because I don't know that, or because I have started believing in my own brokenness, I have this trauma locked in my body, there is going to be some work that we need to do. And I'm using work like this because it may or may not be work, but it's about recognizing that I have all of these stories, beliefs, and ideas that are preventing me from experiencing my wholeness. When I feel broken, I'm doing two things. One, I'm acting broken over and over and over again, but I'm also desperately seeking someone or something to try to feel whole again,
sure,
which, as we've said, is only temporary.
And everything, even when it works, is temporary. It is what
Absolutely.
it is till it isn't. That's a huge saying that I go with in group or working with mental health professionals who are, come on, career codependents at some point.
Yeah.
Behavior-wise, right?
Yeah.
We're a pure and perfect person, and the essence of the being we are is gifted and productive and beautiful, bright, focused, energetic, all those things. So something interrupts that, even if it's a narrative we make,
right,
because of what we've seen, how we've been treated, trauma. It's valid at some point to do that, and then it's not. But here's the part that really always kind of makes me giggle about a system of mental health clients, inpatients, PHP, IOP, the people who want help, what they were doing chemically worked for a while.
Yeah.
And then it stops. And then it didn't tell us it was going to stop. And we kept doing it. So where does the conscious recovery help the practicing addict who maybe doesn't want to quit the regular way, all the conventional ways? You got to go to detox, MAT, medically assisted program.
Right.
You're going to go to a treatment center. We're going to put you in rehab, right? Is there a better, easier, wider channel for them to get into? Talking to, working with, watching you.
There's not one path to recovery, right? And the issue, I think, what you're speaking to with the model as it is established, because it's a model with a 15% success rate, and we pat ourselves on the back. So let's just name that.
That sounds high.
It sounds high, but let's just give them some credit.
That's generous, man.
The issue is they're treating symptoms.
Yeah.
Right. So they're stabilizing, they're getting rid of the addiction, they're doing a chemical detox, they're doing a medical assisted detox. But if we're not working with, to me, the deeper soul work, the spiritual work, when did I separate from my true nature?
Yeah.
What are the beliefs I have locked inside my body? It's not so much about the strategies, because we spend years, people can spend 20 years in talk therapy, and I can say, oh, I understand. My mom used to yell at me, so I have this pattern of feeling not good enough. Great. But
Okay.
what do I do with that?
Yeah.
How do I really heal from that?
Your work lets them do their work,
Yes.
to be fair.
Yes.
So, and here's one of the things that, and listen, everybody at this table, at any level of mental health can agree to disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
And now we've got 15 tools, not just a wrench.
Right.
One of the things I hear, I haven't heard this from you, but I'm vehemently opposed to this when I go to work. That sounds aggressive. I'll just say it's not it's not
Yeah.
a tool. Is the why question. The why. We got to find the why. You have to ask why. How close are you to that as opposed to the what that happened and what to do about it? Because you can why till you die. For some of
Right.
us, you said 20 years. Am I nitpicking?
No, I think you're onto something really huge. There's a practice in conscious recovery called living in the question, where we simply ask ourselves open-ended questions to help us start to explore the box. You talked about the box. I've created this box that I call reality. I'm broken, I'm damaged, women are this, men are this, white people are this. I have this box and I keep re-experiencing it. Questioning that allows that box to become, more expansive. But I always invite, we don't use questions that start with why, because the why is, if I can figure out why, I can eradicate it. Eradicating it is addiction. Let me get rid of this. This is about a very, very different approach.
Yeah, and you said, which wholeheartedly, I thought, honest to God, when you said drugs and alcohol, they're the solution, because they are.
Yeah.
They become the symptom of the sabotage after that because they quit doing their job.
Right.
Pretty soon they're gone, the bag's empty, the bottle's empty, and I still feel empty too. Nothing is doing what was promised. Nobody. I'm not, they're not. So that why thing, I'll liken it to this. I'm passionate about this because I've watched people for years not engage, not change their behavior. There's nothing changing because there's nothing changing because they want to know why.
Yeah.
And why for some of them is not why, like why did it happen? What's the purpose? But who's to blame?
Right.
And it's a lot of work, man. I forgave my dad years ago because I didn't want to become my dad.
Right.
Forgiving the perp means I don't become the victim. And if I'm the victim, I'm already broken.
Yeah, and it's really more about, and I think you're in agreement with this, it's really about more the identity I take on.
Exactly.
So if I take on the identity of a victim, then I'm holding that vibration, and I'm actually literally seeking it in the world unconsciously.
Okay.
Because that's all I deserve. I'm going to choose another person to re-victimize me. So the deeper healing is, what is that identity? What am I holding about that?
And TJ Woodward, let's say, pick a name out of a hat for a man. Any name for a male.
Josh.
Okay, Josh, he's always a good guy. Josh, he's always a good guy. Josh is a city in Alabama. Josh, Alabama is a city that has a certain identity, a certain population, we know what Josh is as a city. The hurricane hits Alabama. Josh is leveled. How many years do you want to spend looking for why? That's what hurricanes do.
Yeah.
So now Josh is not only in the box we thought Josh was. A, it's not his fault. B, there's nobody at fault. C, why? Let's put that question away. Maybe who, what, where, when, how are the great questions, because why is not the... I get so adamant in groups, they'll say, well, I want to know why. Okay, you just put off the healing for a whole bunch of days or years or minutes here. You can why till you die.
Yeah.
But Josh is going to be rebuilt, right? We repair and prepare. What is repair and prepare? How does that line up with conscious recovery? Are we close at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I love the analogy, actually, because if the hurricane comes in and wipes out Josh, but Josh hasn't done his inner healing, the exact same Josh will be rebuilt.
And that's the point that I was trying to make with you're trying to make. The point is, now there's no box. Josh can be a city we never imagined. Josh can be an evolved place where we're not worrying about our prejudged ideas of, to use yours, white, he, she, that, addicted, right? We're Josh, a brand new place, you know? That's the kind of guy I feel like when I go to work.
Yeah, I mean, Josh can be a brand new place. So that's where...
Unless he does what?
Well, unless he does just rebuild it the way that we know how to rebuild it, right? So to me, it always starts with compassion.
Okay.
Self-love. Of course I acted that way. I felt broken. I was sexually traumatized. So I believed there was something fundamentally wrong with me. I also believed that men weren't safe. I had this whole narrative, but it's really much deeper than the narrative, because I knew the narrative at 5 years sober. Like, oh, this happened. I decided this. I believe this.
Yeah.
But the deeper work is what really happened to the 3-year-old that had the trauma. I carried this woundedness.
Where?
I carried it deep in my beingness.
Okay, we're talking about the middle?
We're talking about the middle, but the heart space as well, right?
Okay.
It's in all the rooms: physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual.
Okay.
But the core vibration or the core belief is false. It's not true that I was damaged. That happened, as you said. So what would be the purpose of blame?
Yeah.
But where I think people miss the opportunity is they go to a bypass. Oh, no one's to blame. They did the best they could. Everything's fine. I'm going to move forward. Well, it's not fine. I was 3. I was sexually traumatized. I took on all of this shame, but it's not going to be helpful for me to blame the people involved. But what is going to be important is I spend some time really grieving the sadness that I carried for decades.
Sure. And I'm a believer, one of the shortcuts I believe in, and shortcuts in my world don't mean less work, half step, I didn't do the job. It just means, look, you got a shortcut if you want to go from your house to the gym. You got a shortcut you can take? Yeah, that's what they're for. It's a quicker route from here to hero kind of thing, in healing anyway. Freedom starts with forgiveness. If I forgive the perp, there's no victim, and I don't become the next perp.
Right.
Because I'm going to recreate the role that I'm comfortable, my belief system, the box I'm in. I'm going to recreate that relationships-wise. I'm the rescue guy, right? That was my role as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm in charge early on. I got to be an adult, 21 years old at 5. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Right?
Yeah.
I take that on, so I recreate that role. Conscious recovery will help me with that.
Yeah.
Because I get to feel the sad, the growing up too fast, the lack of, I didn't have a childhood kind of thing. All this, if I wanted to, and then I drink because drinking is working for a minute. What's the work you're talking about?
It really is integrating all of that. It's not abandoning the child, the 3-year-old, right? And even the idea that I'm carrying this as the reason that I am the way I am, there is something there, right? There's something that I want to be curious about, because I have clients say, well, I've just been using that as my excuse. Okay. But there is a reason that has impacted you. What is the impact of that on you?
How do we start to actually heal the 3-year-old? Because most of us are continuing the cycle of abuse with ourselves. Don't feel that way. Even people that do inner child work, they say things like, I'm here now, you're going to be fine. No, the child needs to be honored.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel that way. It's okay that this compassionate lens starts to heal, and we start to give the love and attention to the child they didn't get.
The inmates recently in a penitentiary, there's 800 of them, and they're on one side of a gym. And I said, listen, I'm funny. I know you guys have seen me before. This is a place I go annually. And I said, listen, the rule of the day, is the child in your chair needs care. Yeah. Period. From the child in your chair, by the way, I've got a responsibility to treat that kid well, because I want him to show up tomorrow. I don't want the broken boy I thought I was to take charge, because that's the guy that gets me drunk, loaded, overzealous about sex or relationships or work or all that outer, hey, if I can get it out there, I don't have to do the work in here.
Right.
But the child in my chair gets care from, me.
Yeah.
Now, I'm the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, sure.
But that's selfish. I've always been selfish.
Yeah.
Your response is?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting paradigm that we've been taught we're selfish, right? And because the reality is most of us have been running from self, right? Now, it may show up looking really selfish, all about me, but the deepest root of it, and here's the thing that's interesting, the shortcut is doing the deeper work. Because we can spend 30 years, 20 years, 10 years continuing to run from ourselves and continuing to try to, because here's one thing, Mark, I've been on lately. There's no such thing as a negative emotion. No. And we use the term negative emotion in our field. How do we get rid of it? Yeah. And so if something's negative, I want to eradicate it. I want to get rid of it. Well, that's addiction.
Yeah.
Let me get rid of this. So recovery is let me learn how to recognize that every emotion has a purpose. It's guiding me somewhere. So the shortcut is actually learning how to care for myself. Yeah. And that means being present with what is. That means creating safety is not only external, it's about learning how to have compassion for myself. And the greatest recovery tool, now this may be overly simplified, but the greatest recovery tool is learning how to be present with myself right now.
Yeah.
And if I can be present with myself for the next minute or 2 minutes, I'm in recovery.
And I'm okay with my company. And that's not, this is right out of the book, but it's not self-centered. That's centered self.
Yeah.
I know that I have capable of centered self. I have that capacity. I don't live there a lot because I'm busy or I'm jumping ahead or I'm going backward and all that. So if you're listening right now, watching this, I have a test for you. It's just a quick little 10-second quiz. Sad, mad, glad, afraid. Keep it super simple, right? That's the KISS in our house. Keep it super simple. Keep it simple. Stupid sounded like name calling. I refuse to do it. Especially by Joe Oldtimer in AA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sad, mad, glad, afraid. Sad, mad, glad, afraid. Let's take those 4. Which are the bad ones? Go. Keep it super simple. Here's your answer.
None of them.
None. Sad becomes empathetic and connected and a universal kind of we're here for you. Sad becomes safe at some point. And mad becomes passion to change. That's a phenomenal gift. And glad becomes I'm grateful. I'm energetic. Joy, right? Anger, the mad and fear. Fear becomes faith or respect. My 5-year-old kid said that to me. As good a kid as he is, we don't know how that happened. His mom is in recovery. His dad's in recovery. He said to me he was about 5 years old. He said, Dad, fear can become respect, huh? I said, where'd you hear that? He goes, I just thought of it. First thought, wrong. Said, no, you didn't. Where'd you hear that? He's lying to me at 5. We got to have a talk. I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, you told us that we're afraid of people because we don't understand them sometimes. And we fear first, you say, fear first. We have a bully at school. People are afraid of him. He says, I respect that maybe he has it hard at home. And I went, geez, junior Jesus is in my front seat here. Baby Buddha's telling me what to do.
Right.
But he has that thing where he came into this world. Nobody's blocked his purity, his capacity to see, his compassion. Every once in a while, I feel like, man, I don't want to rub the shine off this human being.
Yeah.
And my sponsor, who's an AA guy, says, "Oh, you're gonna screw him up. Don't worry about it." We try not to do it today. Don't do it a lot. But how do we not screw up the kids?
Well,
just by the way we are.
Well, and it's the way we are, and it's the way we view them, right? So I appreciate what your sponsor is saying, but what if that didn't need to be true?
That was my argument. Like, dude, why is that the playing field? Why is the boundary, hey, don't screw them up a lot? That's the goal line, right? So, and he and I agree to disagree on quite a few things, especially since, I've been sober a long time now. You have too, right?
34, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm behind you a couple of years. At 31 years, I'm not convinced of anything except that I deserve care from the child in my chair.
Absolutely.
And I've got a gift to share with people, and there's no bad feelings. There are no bad feelings. God made no junk. The universe provided no ill will here. I create a lot of that stuff because that's what I've shown.
Well, yeah, and if we can look at emotions differently and say, I wonder what the message in this emotion is, rather than there's something fundamentally wrong here. Yeah. Because again, wrong is I need to get rid of. Good is I want more of. Well, that's the Buddhist definition of suffering. I want more of this and less of that. And that's when we boil it down, that's really what creates the pain.
And that's like all day, every day, man, you're going to be busy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the idea that I'm not enough, whatever, the joke right out of the show, and this isn't for everybody. But
that's your disclaimer.
Yeah, it is.
This one's not for everyone.
Well, listen, I can be a little Tabasco, habanero sometimes. Carolina Reaper. Depends on what spice they want. I work. What language said? I work Disney. I got no problem with G. Yeah. But here's the joke about self-esteem, which this is one personally. You ever had such low self-esteem low, where you're making love to somebody, you look at them and think, I can't trust them. Look at the choices they make.
Well, and that's and actually, if we lean into it, that's the deep truth.
Yeah.
But it's usually not conscious.
Well, and I've become conscious through people like you, teachers, predecessors, they'll call them in some way, who've said, hey, well, here's another option for you. Yeah. If you look at it like this, if we talk about it like this, if the narrative becomes, right, then I get to say, oh, yeah, you know what? I was negative about me, reinforced that so many times that's why they left. I convinced them.
Yeah.
And the choices I make are based on a weakness that I see that I can use for a while, like heroin, coke, meth, Molly, K2, bars, dabs, all that chemical stuff that says I'm addicted to I'm addicted to being addicted.
Well, yeah, and I'm addicted to something to try to ease the pain of what I'm experiencing. And you said something that is really powerful. You said your son is this Buddha being, and that's true.
Yeah.
Our young people, our really young people, are really our greatest teachers if we're willing to listen.
I've learned way more from him than I've taught him. Yeah. He's already a better person than me. Already. He's 13 now. And he still says things like to me like, Dad, you were wrong there. You were rude to her. And I was. I got impatient and I said, it just happened a couple days ago where somebody goes, Dad, he goes, you got mad about something that's no big deal.
When my nephew was, and this, talk about like a moment, my nephew was, I think, 2 or 3 years old in his car seat. And I was driving the car and I had a little road rage and he said, he must have been 4 if he knew this word. He said, Uncle TJ, you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
He's like, basically it's like calling me out. You're teaching all this love and light. You're yelling at the person driving in front of you.
Hey, Mr. Conscious Recovery. What part of that was that? Was that in a workshop for people?
Right.
Listen, and because we're capable on any given day of dropping down a few levels of Buddha, right?
Yeah.
Because I get selfish, I'm impatient, haven't taken care of myself. It's for me. It's usually because the self-care is suffering.
Yeah.
The sleep, the halt that 12-step talks about. Sure, that's like a thumbnail.
Yeah.
There's so many things I do to not take care of me
Yeah.
in a way that I've got a lot of high maintenance work to do if I want to go to work.
Yeah. And the shortcut to self-care is actually listening to that part of ourselves, that inner child, and having love and compassion for it.
And I want
Because then I have energy to be in the world.
And I want to get to that. Your God, your concept of God is...
So I don't choose to use that word today.
Fine.
And the only reason I don't is because it's a word that's so loaded with so much dogma, quite frankly.
Okay.
And so I use different words.
So where do you aim your faith or point your prayers or turn it over to, or is it in?
It's inward.
Okay.
But to be clear to anyone watching right now, I'm not talking about inward to I'm the guy with all the answers, personality self.
Yeah, it's not TJ Woodward,
Right,
I
at all.
don't have to, TJ? I don't, okay.
Please don't.
All right.
Please
a lot
don't.
of pressure.
No.
Especially with...
An impossible pressure. But what I'm talking
Right.
about is that within each and every one of us is
Yeah.
still that essential self. And that's really where my higher power lives. Now, that's not only within me, that's within you and every being that I encounter.
Okay, TJ Woodward is that works for you. Somebody who doesn't have any kind of... I got a sponsor who doesn't use the G word either.
Right.
So we gave him a different one. We used the word guide. And the guide is internal, and he and I have a really good. We still work the steps,
Yeah.
and he's a good dude, great dad, ex-Marine, solid conspiracy theorist, really conservative. But I watch him work the steps again and again because they are working for us. We're doing them on relationship stuff now for him, and we trust a guide. We turn it over to not God because he's an atheist,
Right.
This guy. And the word guide replaces that word. So if they want to do conscious recovery and they want to follow TJ's, clear the path in the jungle of healing, forgiveness, compassion. You said it starts with compassion.
Yeah.
Can they use other words? Can
Sure.
they use...
Of course.
Okay. They can use Jesus. They can use... Okay.
I had someone that came to one of my workshops years ago that said my higher power is the Lord Jesus. And she was the hugest fan of conscious recovery.
Yeah.
And the person sitting next to her said, I'm a devout atheist, but I love conscious recovery too, because it's not a philosophy or a dogma. It's a way of being and a way of returning to our essential self.
I kind of got that read, but that made perfect sense. The fact you say it out loud just confirms that. But, you know, as long as it's not me, as long as it's not her, her I choose.
Right.
It's not in a bag.
Yeah.
It's not in a bottle. It's not a spoonful of. It's that thing that says, you know what, you were born with a huge bunch of gifts. You want to maintain those. You get to keep using them. If you stop the maintenance, they kind of wither away, and then you get every excuse you need to go back to that work you don't want to do.
Yeah. How do I return to that?
Yeah. So it's 12-step friendly. It's God friendly. It's atheist friendly. It's Jesus friendly.
Sure.
One of my favorite lines from the movie Hannibal. Right? Are you a movie guy?
Yeah, I'm a movie guy.
Okay, Hannibal. The guy Mason that's all disfigured. He's talking to Clarice Starling, and he wants to poke her a little bit because he's a born again now guy, right?
Right.
And he goes, "Have you found Jesus again?" He goes, "The risen Christ." And she goes, "Oh," and he goes, "Nothing beats the Riz." I just love that line. And for some people, that's the truth. Nothing beats the Riz.
Right.
For me, it's a she.
Okay.
Am I allowed?
Of course.
I use the G word, God, first syllable of goddess, right? And goddess for me is. This is super personal. If you want to click off, I get it. But it's worked for me for 31 years. It's maternal in its essence, if that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And I know that's assigning a sex, but that's the maternal, that's the mother, that's the womb caregiver, right?
Yeah.
Where I came from. She has a very gentle nature. She is a goddess as opposed to a princess that I am. Right? I got princess in me. Princess is high maintenance, royalty, and deserving, right? But a princess wants other people or things to do that maintenance.
Yeah.
All those things we talked about being addicted. A goddess will do her own work. So that's where I go. I hear her. And there's that internal guide, goddess, she, Mother Nature, gentle current of truth. Right?
Yeah, and that's what we spoke earlier about the why.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when we talk about spirituality. Most of us go into a belief system. And it really isn't ultimately about that. And another way to say it is whatever you believe is great. But really it's about how do I reconnect with my essential self, regardless of our belief system, regardless of our spiritual path. Ultimately, a lot of the spiritual paths are taking us outward. All we're saying is that, and there's also this inner journey of reconnecting with ourselves.
And I'm not self-centered as much as I am self-contained. As far as this is where the toolbox is. This is where I kind of liken it to a house sometimes. There's the attic, the living room, the thermostat, and the basement. Right? They're all. It's computer, storage, right? Attic, living room, other people, compassion, a lot of warmth. Thermostat, too much. Not enough. How hot? How cold? And basement, plumbing. It's necessary, plumbing. At some point, I use the plumbing to make kids, or the plumbing works to empty and cleanse. Yeah. And this is storage and knowledge, and that's necessary. But I don't want to be top heavy. I don't want to live in a basement either. Older, dark, damp, scary.
Yeah.
Right? But that thermometer, that GPS.
That's it.
Okay, so. For me, it's in the center. Do you actually hear it?
Great question. I actually more feel it.
Okay.
Right. So I have heard it, and of course in our field, we can get a diagnosis for that. But it's more about really feeling into, it's a felt sense of like, I know I'm moving in a direction that is truer to this inner GPS, not the right place or the wrong place. And that really is what, to me, recovery is really about. It's so simple. The more I am aware that that's who I really am, the less I'm going to want to look outside of myself.
Sure.
Right. And so maybe that's the simplest definition. I'm turning back within and listening to the inner GPS. As you were talking about your sponsee, your friend that was talking about, the guide.
Yep.
That's what came up for me, is like this inner GPS.
Yeah. And it was one thing to start hearing it. And this is a slow recovery process for me. I was probably 10 or 12 years sober before I kind of consistently heard it. Right. I was probably 15 years sober before I decided to trust what I heard.
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah,
I mean,
right on schedule.
Years into it. Yeah. Years into it, where I can hear it, and I what? And then I hear this talk myself around
overpower it. Yeah.
And then this beats through it, like the passion says, "Oh yeah," right. And this one says, "I know," and downstairs goes, "Brr, brr, brr, brr," right? Go find her, right? But this I could hear. And it took years more than that to be able to trust what I heard instead of what I heard, instead of what I felt, instead of what I wanted.
Right.
All those other competing voices. So if it's a nudge or a handheld or a shove, or does it have some kind of picture for you? I know you felt it. To me, it comes in words. She actually uses 2, 3, 4 words, never more than 4. But does it have a picture for you sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's pictures, it's words, it's a feeling, it's a sense, it's a sensation.
I don't want to sit here by myself right now because I'm thinking mine talks to me. She literally.
I have had moments where it's like the voice is so clear and it's very, very a lot of clarity.
Okay, so it's not just a feeling or a magnetic thing. But there's pictures you can see.
Yeah, absolutely.
You ever work with a client and you see pictures words about them?
For sure.
Yeah. Sixth sense, intuitive, psychic, women's intuition, a good orderly direction. Do you have a name, a favorite for yours?
Well, I could give you all kinds of names, but right. I wanted to speak.
Is that too limiting?
No. Okay. I love it. But what I want to really speak to is the energy of it, right? Because life is energy. This table is not solid. We experience it as solid, right? And so in that same way, we're all actually very in tune with energy, frequency, who feels safe. What is this experience you and I are having right now? And most of us have been taught not to trust it. And you said something really powerful. You said, it took me 10 or 15 years. Yeah, it took me 10 or 15 years, but that doesn't mean it has to for anyone else.
No.
And that's why I created Conscious Recovery, because I discovered this way out. I discovered, and to use your language, it is a shortcut actually, because it's moving right back down to source. So it's mine to share with the world, where someone doesn't have to have 15 years of continuing, even in recovery, to search outside and have all this pain and all this disconnection and the shame. That was well into my recovery. So what if we can create a space where people can start getting that much earlier?
And safe space, to use your words, for somebody who doesn't need to wait 15 years to find out that they're worth their own care.
Correct.
Or 5 more sponsors, or another court case, or we switched home groups twice to find out that, forgiveness is a gift and I deserve it, or there are no bad feelings. So
right.
I got a question I ask every guest.
Okay.
All right. But I don't know right now if it's, my gut said ask permission, so I think I will. The question is, 5 years from now, in a perfect world, where are you and what are you doing?
Sitting here talking to you.
Okay. And is that because this is our present?
Yeah, it's because
the future is right now.
We're
going to be mindful.
My mind would have so many ideas.
Okay,
but
right.
I want to share something.
I don't
with
want to
you.
disrespect you by asking you that question. It's just that I ask everybody that question.
I know, I love it, and
it's a great answer.
My mind would have a million answers.
Okay.
One of my really close people in this world is Dr. Krista Gilbert. I don't know if you know her, but she's been in the treatment field for many, many years. And I ran into her at a conference, and she said, "Oh, tell me what's going on with conscious recovery. I'm really excited." And I said, "Oh, well, I have this plan to have it in 1,000 treatment programs in this certain amount of time." And she just leaned in and looked at me, and I thought, okay, we're having this moment.
Yeah.
And she said, "What if instead of that, you were to spend time really feeling into the profound gift that you're offering the world?" There's no destination. It's not about how many treatment programs. It's really about reminding myself the true reason I've brought conscious recovery into the world. I found a way to end my own suffering, just like Buddha said and other spiritual teachers, not because I'm this great spiritual master, but because it got so painful for me that I was able to find a way to reconnect with my essential beingness. And in that place, there's really no time. Right. Of course, I want conscious recovery to be able to help millions of people, but that's just my mind creating a story.
Yeah, you were telling her your truth at the moment, and you got caught up in it, and she was like the 5-year-old in the car seat said, "You're a hypocrite." You know what I mean? We're right here.
She was reminding me of the greater truth.
Exactly, which is, and you got to be grateful for the gift you have.
For sure.
It's obvious to people who, I guess if you have gifts, it's easier to see somebody with gifts. It's like you drive a Cadillac, you see Cadillacs. So this is something I always do too with guests. I've loved having you here.
Thank you. Me too.
You're welcome, and phenomenal. This can help a lot of people, and I don't have to know who they are. Shameless plug. Anything and everything, no boundaries, no limits. Shameless plug, TJ Woodward, go.
Yeah, wholehearted.org. And we've got a whole system for clinicians to be trained on what it means to hold space, how to look for the wholeness in a person, and a really way to integrate conscious recovery into your practice. There's also conscious recovery for individuals, where I'm going to walk someone through the entire conscious recovery process, everything that you and I just talked about, to have a practical way to begin to actually heal what's underneath all the addictive behavior.
And wouldn't the mental health professionals tell any client they cared for, "Hey, wouldn't you rather have one more skill in the set?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that's you. I really appreciate it. Thanks. We're going to have you back on.
Thank you, Mark. I have all these years that we haven't connected. It was the perfect moment. And I really, really thank you for your presence and curiosity and our connection.
You're welcome. Listen, you can come back anytime, wholehearted.org. His name is TJ Woodward. It's worth a second or third or 50th look, but one at a time. Wow. So, you okay, right? Sometimes what the challenge is where the new information becomes available to us, and it's awkward, you know. I get to work with a lot of inpatients or outpatients, and they're mental health people who are looking for some kind of answer that works, something different. And sometimes that it's a hard conversation to have with a family or a family member who says, I don't know what to do. Well, I'll tell you what, isn't that part of the grace? We get to ask a question. I don't know. Can you help? Because eventually it comes from TJ Woodward, Mark Lundholm. Pick somebody you like or something that they are telling you that works, and you can go from, I don't know, can you help, to I do know and I will help. If you like that, here's some more for you. That essence that he talked about, that purity, that essential self that you're entitled to. There's a wholeness there. I like to tell people who are recovery people, it's no secret here, I'm a recovery guy. And if you're not a recovery person, this still works for you or can help somebody you're going to talk to this week. My gut says in the next 7 days, you're going to talk to somebody who, oh yeah, let me drop this on you. There's nothing missing in here. I know that that's where I want to leave you today with this episode. There's a whole message that our friend brought today to talk to us about, TJ Woodward. Mark Lundholm will tell you there's a whole part of you that there's nothing missing. What do you want to do with what you got? How do you want to serve? How does the universe benefit, or the community or your family benefit from you doing what you're best at, which is your business, not mine. You're doing what you're best at, or you're doing your best not to do that thing. We're either running towards service or away from it. And you get to choose this week. So I got a couple of love tasks for you today. One is, just for 24 hours, write down 3 things about yourself that you cannot live without. 3 things about you that you cannot live without. The second love task is, reach out to somebody else in the next 24 hours and say thank you. One person. You'll know who it is. You know who I'm talking about. Some of you went, oh yeah, right now you know. 24 hours, say thank you to that one person who absolutely gave you something that you didn't have before you met them, or continue to give you after you met them, right? You might be one of those for other people. Take a chance, 24 hours. Love task, 3 things, and 1 thank you. I know you can do that. Everybody's got time now to do that. Here you go. Shortcut. What you give energy to will continue. What you put your toes on goes on, and whatever you thought about most today became your guide today. How do you want to make that look tomorrow? Once again, as always, peace, love, compassion, generosity, gratitude. If you don't see some out there, be some out there. As always, thanks for checking in. Later.